Good evening and welcome to Let's Talk with Pastor Ngwaru show. On this particular show, we address marriage, family, we address all aspects of life. And tonight, we are basically looking at global events and the questions we should be asking ourselves. When we look at global events and the things that are happening around the world, definitely, all thinking people have got questions at the back of their minds. And tonight, we want to share some of the questions that I think we should be asking ourselves. This particular session has been influenced by an international conference that is coming on the 23rd of January to 31st January 2021, which is being hosted by Safeliz Publishing House. You'll find this in Spain, they in Europe. They have organized an online conference where they are looking at these global events and they are trying to find the answers. So they are pulling together scholars and world and leaders to discuss and to be able to come up with certain answers that I'm going to be raising, that you are going to be raising. And this is why this session is very important. It's important to Safeliz and their planning team over there for them to have an idea of how we here in Southern Africa, what questions we do have, what concerns we do have, what fears and anxieties we do have as far as global events are concerned. So I would like you to really participate as usual. May you put your questions that you have around what is happening currently, post that on the chat line. I am sure the marketing director of Safeliz, their representative in Africa, is also listening to the program. And after this program, they are going to be watching this wherever the presenters are, so that they have an idea that, oh, the people down there in Southern Africa, this is how they are reading global events. And these are the questions they have. And I'm sure they will be able to provide us with whatever answers they will come up with. I also would like to say that immediately after this world program, and I'm sure some of you have already received the registration forms, after this program, we are going to have a follow-up program where we are going to call scholars locally to reflect on this particular conference, which is running at a world scale. We're going to look at the answers. We're going to look at how they understand issues and how they are responding to issues and what suggestions they have for every one of us to be able to adapt into a world that is changing so rapidly like this. Once again, I would like to welcome you to the show, and I want to believe that God is going to help and to bless every one of us. So before I go to the questions that I think we should be asking as far as global events are concerned, I want us to create a context. Let us come up with a historical context that will inform the questions that we need to ask. I'll start with the political, socio-political. I'll go to health, I'll go to natural disasters and many other things of that particular nature. So when we go to the political and all these aspects that I'm looking at, I am looking at 1900 and all the way to 2021 January to this very date, and look at the events that have redefined the landscape of our planet. Like I said, let me begin with the political. Did you know, friends, that the First World War happened in 1914 to 1918, and about 16 million civilians perished in that process. And that was followed by the Second World War in 1939 to 1945, Second World War. And in that particular war, about 60 million civilians also perished in the process. That in some cases that could be a population of 4, if not 3 countries, and whatever. In some cases, the whole thing perishing in a world war. And then, of course, something that was that redefined our planet happened on 9 November 1989. This year will not be forgotten in history, because on that particular day, the Iron Curtain, or the wall that is separated Eastern Europe from Western Europe, that ran across Berlin in Germany. During that time, Germany was divided into 2. You had Eastern Germany and you have got Western Germany. Eastern Germany, which represented the communist world, and then Western Germany, which represented also Western Europe and capitalism and what have you. And for years, these two countries, or this divided Germany, was like this for many years. But by some mystery, on 9 November 1989, that wall crumbled down into and formed what we currently have today as Germany. No longer East Germany or West Germany, but it became one nation again that we call the powerful nation of Germany. And as Germany unified, it opened the door to the collapse of communism. In other words, Eastern Europe, which was running on communistic ideology and whatever, that ideology of 75 years crumbled immediately after the wall of Berlin fell. Immediately after that, you'll notice that 17 January 1991 to 28 February 1991 as well, there was something called the Operation Desert Storm. And this is when the great nations of this world came together to fight against Saddam Hussein, or fighting against Iraq. This was also a moment in history that changed the face of the world, because in terms of the technology that was used during that time and the way the warfare was fought, some people have come to believe that what we call postmodernism was given birth to by that particular war coming forward, or coming during this time, because technology then rose to another level. Information technology rose to another level. So this is what we see happening in 1991. And again, during that particular period, you also have from 1988 to 91, you have this powerful bloc called the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union came to its knees. You know, we used to have America as a superpower, and we've got the Soviet Union as another equal and powerful superpower. But after the unification of Germany and the falling apart of communism, we also see in Europe all those countries that formed what was known then as Soviet Union. They just broke apart and moved away, and Russia remained by itself. This was another major mystery that happened on the planet Earth when the world looked at Soviet Union collapsing, communism collapsing, and Germany unifying, and the landscape of the political landscape and economic landscape of the world was redefined around that event. I also would like to slightly take you back to 1948. 1948. When you go to 1948 to 1994, this is the history about apartheid. But basically, my interest is in 1994. In 1994, when officially apartheid gave way to what we call today the Republic of South Africa, or the South African democracy was born then. It may not be perfect, but at least apartheid collapsed. And in 1994, we saw democracy coming up, and we saw the first black president running South Africa in the name of Nelson Mandela. This event brought the whole world to awe and to celebration as we saw apartheid going down and history unfolding itself. That is as much as I can go with the 1900s. There's a lot that happened, but I just want to pick some highlights. When we got into the 2000s, or in other words, the 21st century, oh my goodness, I don't know where the wind came from. I don't know what happened, and I'm sure everybody, every one of us who was present during that time was spellbound. When we saw uprisings in the Arab world, so much so that by the end of February 2012, did you know by then, because of the uprisings, we lost the leadership in Tunisia, in Egypt, Libya, and Yemen. They were just ransacked and pushed out of power overnight. And this was moving at a speed of light. You could not explain exactly what on earth is happening. Some of these things, like I basically said earlier on, you definitely need mystery to be able to explain that. And these uprisings in the Arabic world did not just end with Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and Yemen. They continued in Syria, they continued in Bahrain, they continued in Algeria, in Sudan, in Jordan, in Iran, in Kuwait, in Morocco, Oman, and all other countries that we can imagine. Can you imagine the Islamic world or the Arabic world seems to be imploding and it's falling from within, and you don't seem to understand what kind of wind attacked those nations, but it so happened. And I'm sure we all know what has happened in Syria. I don't know if we still have a nation called Syria and what have you. A lot has happened there. A lot has happened in Yemen, and all being a mystery. It was a season in history when historians, scientists, and everybody else looked at it, what is happening, and you could not tell exactly. You could not explain exactly where is this coming from. Where is this fire coming from? Let me also take you on the continent of Africa from 1998, and it spills over into the new millennium. That is up to 2002, 2003, and maybe up to 2004. And I'm sure that conflict is still perennial, is still going on and whatever. But by 2004, when a report and a survey was made of the carnage, how many people had died in the DRC from 1998, it was estimated that around 3.9, almost 4 million civilians died in one of the deadliest civil war ever recorded after the Second World War. I also want to come a bit home to Zimbabwe. When you come to Zimbabwe, all the way from 1999 up to today, that economy has been struggling. It has been struggling. And at one point in 2008, that economy actually collapsed. I was there personally to experience that when the Zimbabwe local currency actually died. I don't know whether we can call it a natural death. And all the savings organizations and members of the public had all the deposits in the bank. For as long as it was in local currency, there was an announcement that that money is no longer money. These are some of the long-term challenges that have actually affected Africa, and Africa is still looking at solutions in terms of how do you then bring Zimbabwe back to what it was when it was the breadbasket of Africa. Enough of Africa. I would like us to then zoom in into the United States of America. United States of America. This is another history-making nation. And when I say history-making nation, you better believe me. Let me start with the 9/11, popularly known as 9/11. And this is when the Twin Towers in New York at the World Trade Center were actually brought down in a terroristic attack and whatever, and people were using aeroplanes. And they even went as far as bombing the Pentagon itself, the strongest and the most powerful nation on earth. On 9/11, it was defied. It was defied. And to the world, this became another redefining moment in terms of security around the world, in terms of how do we manage terrorism and everything of that particular nature. Friends, things have happened in this world, and the things continue to happen in this world. Like, for instance, we are looking at these global events. Big things have happened and big things continue to happen. And on a lighter note, history was also made on the American soil from the 20th of January 2009 to 20th January of 2017. For the very, very first time, in the history of the world and in the history of America, we had a black president at the helm of power in a white-dominated economy, and where the blacks are in the minority. But against all odds, and by mystery that maybe only God can explain, for the first time, we had a black president on the American throne. When the whole world looked at America, it was a day to reckon with, a day to remember when history was being made. Did you know that just yesterday, history was repeated on the American continent on the 20th of January, 2021. For the very first time, the very first time in the history of America, a lady became a vice president at White House, and that is Kamala Harris, of Asian descent, a black woman. For the very first time, the black blood ascends to the throne on this very powerful nation of United States of America. It continues to make history. When I was listening to the inauguration speech by Joe Biden, and he actually says he's the only privileged white president on the American soil to have served as a vice president to a black president, and now to be the white president with a vice president who is black, and not only black, but a woman. I don't think these are simple things that are happening around the world. And of course, friends, let me rush to say that history, the American history, is not complete. The American history is not complete until a chapter about Donald Trump is written. His 4 years of presidents were overshadowed with conflict and global alienation and trade wars and everything that was happening. I don't think America had seen such a president who who was prone to conflict and who would fight with allies and stuff like that. Things were simply happening around there. And as if history was not enough, we saw what happened at the Capitol Hill when that building was defied by a mob that possibly got engaged in insurrection because they did not want their president to leave, and they believed that the election was stolen. I sat down and I'm watching television. As I'm watching television for weeks, and you are hearing the rhetoric that the election was stolen and there were recounts upon recounts and taking each other to court. And you say, is this an African country? Is this a third world country? What has happened to the greatest democracy on planet Earth? A lot has happened in the world, in our world. I'll not go deeper into Trump, and I'm sure this is current news, and we all have an idea exactly of what happened there. And maybe before I leave that particular chapter, in the 6 decades that I have lived, I've seen so many American presidents. I don't think there is an American presidential inauguration that I did not attend on TV. But I've not seen a situation where an outgoing president does not want to greet an incoming president. You don't want to see his face. No, you don't want to see his face. Not only that, you don't even want to attend his inauguration. You have the status of being the president of United States of America. United States of America. You are the outgoing president. You need to welcome the new president in, but you opt to leave. I'm sure he knows the reasons why. But all we can say, some of us, history was made on the American political turf. History was made. Democracy was tested to the zenith. The democracy, as known in the Western world, was tested to the limit. If what happened at the Capitol Hill had happened on the African soil, if that had happened on some Asian country where people get in the parliament, where they get on the seat of power, and you defy that building like that, I want to believe that we would still be counting bodies after such a revolution. We'll be counting bodies. But the American thing, the American show restraint in that particular situation. And so let's see what happens as history continues. Let me also go to now the health situation. Let's go to the health situation. When we go to health, you discover 1918 to 1919, we have the Spanish flu that killed up to 100 million people. 1990s, you have HIV and AIDS coming, you have Ebola, and then COVID-19 is our current challenge. And this has also brought a new thinking, a new feeling, a new way of looking at our own world. And other people would like to call it a new world order, because this has come to reorganize our world. I don't know how many times the American government came up with the rescue package to help people pay rent, to help people survive under circumstances and whatever. It's not only America, but around the whole world. A lot also happened in terms of lifestyle diseases that are going on, in terms of depression and everything else. Our world is going through a lot. And then when I leave that, let us go to the earthquakes. Let's go to earthquakes and tsunamis. 1908, 80,000 people perished in Italy. 1920, 200,000 people perished in China. 1923, 144,000 perished in Japan. You can go as far as 2010, 300,000 in Haiti, people perished. And 2011, 20,000 people perished in Japan. As far as natural disasters, tsunamis, and the earthquakes were concerned, we have seen a lot. Let me also quickly go to famines. I want you to get this statistic so that when we talk of global events and when we begin to ask you questions, you have an idea exactly of what we are talking about. This is what we don't just want to rush to the questions, but we want to get to understand the context the world is operating in. When it comes to famine, 1917 to 1918, between 8 and 10 million people perished in northern Iran. 1921 to 1922, 5 million people perished in the Russian famine of 1921. 1932 to 1933, 3 to 8 million people perished in the Soviet Union. 1944 to 1945, 2.4 million people perished in Java, Indonesia, under Japanese occupation. And again, here's another very big number. 1959 to 1961, 15 million people perished in what is known as Great Chinese famine. Unofficial records, of course, will put it at 20 to about 43 million. As we do this broadcast right now, you can Google if you want. You go to World Hunger Clock, where you'll discover that 2.5 billion people are living in under conditions that we can describe as moderate to severe food insecurity. If I would mention, there are countries right now that are possibly being manned by the World Food Program because they're not able to feed themselves. There's a lot that is going on in the area of food security. And we've got about 2.5 billion people who are struggling as far as food is concerned. These are not the only natural disasters that I'm able to list at this point in time. Let me also go to other natural disasters, possibly that are related in one way or another. I would like to look at climate change. Looking at climate change. My thinking, and I'm sure I'm very correct, the climate change, the impact of this, the peak of this is yet to be realized. As we see the ozone layer depleting, as we see the quality of air being something else, deteriorating, as we see droughts and we see floods and we see global warming and the sea level rising, there are great fears in terms of what the future holds. It's a bleak future. If you're a leader, if you're a scientist, you'll definitely understand what I'm talking about. We have also seen fires. We have not seen fires like that. In Australia, in 2020, fires in Australia that engulfed that nation. Fires that almost eliminated the whole of the Amazon rainforest. And did you know that 20% of the world oxygen is manufactured in that rainforest by those trees? But it was almost cleared by wildfires. You go to Australia, you go to in America, California, the fires over there, and you go to was it last year in Portugal, Spain, and part of Europe, fires over there. Things are happening at the natural world. We have no idea what the future holds. And as if that is not enough, think of it. The storms, cyclone Idai, and many other names that we can give to cyclones that have devastated the Caribbean islands, the coastal America, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Malawi, and the thousands disappear in floods of that particular nature. It is as it were, nature has simply gone out of control. This is the kind of world that we are living in. I said that at the very opening of this program. I said that we should be asking some questions. We should be asking some questions. And I'd like to take the remainder of this time looking at some questions, some real questions to the things that I've described. And did you know, friends, that I've been very conservative, very conservative. There are a lot of detail to add. I would need the whole year to actually describe the state of this world. No wonder at Safeliz over there in Spain, they are hosting this world program, world conference online to be able to understand the direction our world is going. And to be able to ask people to request people to ask you questions and to respond to questions so that people have an idea of what to expect in the future. The first question that I do have over here is, the first question that I have here is, what do you make of all this? What do you make of all this? If I'm asking yourself, the first question is, let me ask it to you. What do you make of all this? What explanation do you have? What explanation do you have when you look at the political history of this world, where we are coming from, where we are? When you look at natural disasters, climate change and all those things, rising levels of the sea, impending disasters that scientists are envisaging, what comes to your mind? And then the other question when I leave you is, I would like to go to our leaders. What could our leaders be thinking right now? Right now, as I'm broadcasting here, this week, this year, we've been moving with them from one pandemic to another, from one crisis to another. What is going on in their minds, the political leaders, if you may guess? What are they thinking about? The economists of this world, when they look at the global trends in terms of climate change, in terms of civil unrest, in terms of challenge to democracy, in terms of radicalism, in terms of a lot of things that are happening, how are scientists projecting the economy of this world? Where are we going? Where are we going? How is business going to be like in the near future, if a couple of years from today? What are the fears? What are the concerns? What are they talking about? How are they preparing themselves for a world that is changing on a daily basis before us? I would like to ask a question. along that very same question, in terms of what our leaders are thinking. What are the scientists thinking? You know, these are the ladies and gentlemen who get into research, who tell us exactly their projection in terms of climate change in the next 20 years, in the next 40 years, and what if, is it giving them peace? What are they seeing? What are their projections? You know, the other day I was listening to some Sky News over there from UK, and they were featuring another city, another town, another small town on the coastline. And they actually projected that, look, in the next 40 years, this whole city and area will be under water. And what did I hear that day? We need to decommission the town so that people can move upland. Now, these are people who are seeing something happening in 40 years, and they're beginning to respond to it right now. I don't think it's only UK with that threat. There are quite a number of areas, and scientists are not sleeping, coming up with scenarios of what this world could be a few years from today. It's not only political leaders who are having sleepless nights. It's not only economists and researchers who are having sleepless nights. What about in the religious circle, in the world of religion? What are the religious leaders thinking? What is going on in their mind? How do they explain this? How does religion explain what is happening? And how do their views work together with the views of economics, the views of science, and the views of politics? We are not living in simple times, friends. Our times have really changed. They have changed. And those who think are beginning to think seriously, very, very seriously about the future of this world. May I be quick to say the future of this world has changed. It's no longer business as usual. Whether you go to church or you don't go to church, our world has changed, and it is changing on a daily basis. The other question is a follow-up question to the other question that I've asked today is, what kind of life are we likely to see in the next 50 years and maybe up to 100 years? If this planet will continue in the next 100 years, maybe 50, with what we are seeing today, what do you think the people of that time will be going through? I know some of you are listening. You may be 70 years that time, 90 years old that time. Maybe your children will be 50 years old and what have you. But there's a population that is here today, which is going to be there 50 years from today, 30 years from today, who are likely to live in a totally different civilization than what has ever been known on planet Earth. We must be prepared for a world that is different from what we know, that lives differently from what we know, that thinks differently from what we know, and that have got survival strategies that are different from what we know. When you look back in the last 100 years, from 1900 to where we are, a lot has changed. People of 1900 and back, when they compare their lives with what we are living today, it's a universe of difference. Life has totally changed. How do you prepare yourself for that unknown future? What do we do? What do we do? The other question that I do have is our planet resilient? Is our planet resilient? You know, when I talk of resilience, I am talking of something that is able to fall and bounce back. If you are fighting a resilient boxer, you give them the punch, they fall, they wake up, they fight back until they win the match, but they've been falling and waking up and fighting. Our planet has been fighting for generations. Maybe let me say ever since industrialization, when industrialization came into being, when we started using chemicals, when we started going into radioactive material and what have you, when we started coming up with coal as a source of energy and emissions are going in the air, fossil fuels, petrol, diesel, and everything that has defined the way we live today. For how long is the world going to stand pollution without collapsing? Is it not possible? Maybe I don't want you to exaggerate, and I don't even want to be an alarmist, and I don't want to be what do you call it, conspiracy theorist. Please save me that. I just want to be realistic. I just want to be real. That's what I want to be. Is it not possible that our world is giving in? I know nations have sat down to come up with rescue operations of our environment and whatever, and sometimes we are doing a little too late. A little too late. That we cannot stop trying. Let's keep trying. We may slow down, but is it not possible that the future of this world has other possibilities and options? Has it ever occurred in your mind? Let me ask you. Has it ever occurred in your mind that this planet can actually die? I know somebody saying, Mike, you are now going to extremes. No, allow me to go to extremes because I said questions we should be asking ourselves. If the current rate of pollution continues like this, if the Antarctic and Arctic oceans are melting and their waters are coming down and seas are rising up and heat waves and everything, if they continue unabated, is it not possible that we can actually have a dead planet? I don't know what scientists think about that kind of question. I don't know what our scholars do on the 23rd of January to 31st of January. I don't know how they are going to be answering such questions. And my question is plainly this: how resilient is this planet? Soils are dying, waters are dying, the air is dying. Can we continue another centuries and centuries ahead of us with this kind of damage and abuse to our own environment? I don't know. I don't know. I'll be in the conference room listening to the scholars speak to us. We have posed the questions and we wait to hear the answers from them. The last question that I have here is hope. 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 There are times when I kind of when I don't know how to do something, I simply say, I don't know how to spell that word. Like, for instance, when you talk of hope, and when I have no answers, I often say, I don't know how to spell the word hope. And I think I can repeat the same right now. When we talk of hope, and definitely, we all need to talk of hope from a political point of view. We need to talk of hope from an economic point of view. We need to talk of hope from a scientific point of view. We need to talk of hope from a religious point of hope. But my question is, what is that hope? If I were to ask politicians as they read into the future, what is hope? Economists, what do they think hope is? Scientists, what do they think hope is? Religion, what do you think hope is? And we cannot deny the world to think of hope, to conceptualize hope. I would like to ask our world leaders in this summit that is coming to be able to define to us what they conceive to be hope, and something that we can share with the world that is going through turmoil like this. I don't know, friends, you remember I requested you, if you have got any question that you also would like to add to the questions that I have presented there, you are most welcome. You can actually throw in your questions. We just have a couple of minutes to get your questions, and be guaranteed. You ask a question here, Mr. Joseph Mudzingwa is going to pick it up and throw it to their session. At least they'll be open to this YouTube, Facebook footage. They'll be able to know how we are reading the world, what questions we have. And I would appreciate if you can also add your own questions. And as you are adding your questions and posting your questions, I just want to maybe summarize in terms of what we have discussed tonight. We looked at global events from 1900 to 2021, and we have discovered that the world has gone through mysterious political upheavals, which can only be explained by mystery. It happened in Europe, it happened in Asia, it happened on the African soil, and we have seen it happening on the American turf. History continues to be made on the political scale. What we don't know is whether democracy, as we know it today, will continue to hold. Dictatorship, communism came, and we saw communism failing. Now we remained with capitalism and also this, what you call democracy and whatever. For how long is it going to hold? When you look at, like I said, you go to Hong Kong, you go to Paris, you go to other places and whatever, and America itself, they had for this inauguration that has just gone by, 20 January 2021, they had to amass the number of soldiers, which are much more than all the soldiers they have in the Middle East, to come and protect an inauguration. Is this the beginning of something we don't know? I don't know. We also spoke of health. We spoke of health. Yeah, people are dying. War is doing its thing. Political conflict is doing its thing. But we have seen disease claiming and taking its toll on millions of people, wiping out civilization, human civilization. Our biggest challenge is how to deal with a disease. Right now, we are confronted of a disease. A virus has conquered the world. And we hope that the vaccine will work. And sometimes when we think we have a breakthrough, you have a new disease that comes on the scene. And this has been the habit of viruses in the last 100 years. Lifestyle diseases on the rampage. We have spoken of earthquakes. Earthquakes that claim 300,000 people at a go. 300,000, 80,000, 100,000 at a go. You find a city is claimed, a whole population goes to death in one single event. We have spoken of famine that destroyed millions of people, 15 million, 10 million. And we've even told you that today, when you go to the World Hunger Clock, 2.5 billion people are struggling to eat. They have no food. They are struggling to find food. There's food insecurity. That's the kind of world that we find ourselves in. We have spoken of climate change, which scientifically speaking, we have not gotten to the beginning of the impact, the full measure of impact. The peak is yet to be realized of climate change. Those who are going to live in the future are going to live with the consequences that they may not be able to contain, uncontainable. I want to thank you for listening, friends, wherever you are. Thank you for taking time to listen to this. I know I did not give you answers because we need to, first of all, sit in that conference, Safeliz conference, final events, online conference on final events. Let's hear what the scholars are bringing to us. And then after that, we are going to invite guests in the studio, and then we can share with you their feedback on that conference and also their own input. It's always a pleasure to have you around. And remember, friends, you are what makes things happen. We want to make this channel a channel of choice for human development. And we want you to be a part of it. Imagine if you were to subscribe to our YouTube page, Let's Talk with Pastor Ngwaru, and also follow us on Let's Talk with Pastor Ngwaru Facebook page. You will have made a statement to the world that this channel is worth listening to. If you have not subscribed yet, I'd like to invite you heartily, please go ahead and subscribe. We have a lot coming, a lot coming. Until next time, God bless you and good night.